Okay, we are going to go over using the substitution method for solving systems of equation. Okay, so we talked about on that last video, one of the ways that you guys can solve problems like this is by graphing those. And both of these two would be ones that would be fairly easy to graph since they don't have super complex. But I personally think it's easier just to solve these in an algebraic sense. Okay, so talking about our substitution method. Okay. Well, what we're going to do for our substitution method, the strategy is that we are going to isolate one of the variables in the equation, okay? And then after we isolate that variable, we are then going to plug that new expression in to the other equation. So we're going to substitute that in. And when we substitute that, that will allow us to solve for one of the variables. And then after we go through and find what one of the variables are, we will then go through and figure out the other. And that's kind of the whole premise of the process. So the first step with this is we need to decide what variable is going to be the easiest to solve for. So looking up here, what variable is going to be the easiest to solve for? And there's actually three on this one. That x, and that y. Okay? So what makes those the variables that we would want to solve for? Well, it's the fact that they're there by themselves. They're going to be very easy to solve for. It's going to take one step to move the other thing over to the other side. Okay? So, let's just work that out here. Okay? And I'm going to start out, I'm going to solve for this one. Why? Because I want to. Okay? So, my first step then, I've got x plus 2y equals 10. And I'm going to solve for that x. I'm going to get that x by itself. Okay, now I'm going to do that by subtracting 2y to both sides. And when I do that, I get that x equals negative 2y plus 10. Okay? I'm then going to take this negative 2y plus 10, and I'm going to substitute that in for the x on this equation. And the reason I can do that is because I know that x equals negative 2y plus 10. So therefore, if I have an x plus y equals 6, I can take what x equals this right here, and I can simply plug that in for my x. Okay, and this is our substitution step. So instead of writing an x there, I'm going to write a negative 2y plus 10. Okay, now, why did I add parentheses there? Well, sometimes this might be a 2x, which means that there'd be a 2 on the outside there, and we would have to distribute that. So when we substitute in, we definitely want to make sure we have our parentheses. Okay, so that is our substitution step. Okay, now if you guys look at your equation, the only variables we have here are y's. So now we will be able to solve for our y's. So I've got a negative 2y plus 10 plus y equals 6. My first step should be to combine my y's together. So if I have a negative 2y and a positive y, that will leave me with just a negative y plus 10 equals 6. Okay. I could then subtract 10 to both sides. That gives me a negative y equals a negative 4. Divide both sides by negative 1, and when I divide both sides by negative 1, I end up finding that y equals 4. Okay? That's the first part of my answer. Y equals 4 is the first important part of that answer. Now that I have found y equals 4, I need to take that knowledge and I can plug it back in to either one of these two equations. It does not matter which equation you plug it into. They will both give you the same answer. So I'm going to take y equals 4, and I'm going to plug it into either one of these two equations. Okay? So, I've got my y equals 4 here. I'm just going to plug it into the bottom one. Why? Well, because it looks a lot easier. So x plus y, but instead of a y, we know that y equals 4. So I'm going to plug a 4 in here. Again, we want to use parentheses in case we have to remember to multiply. Okay, and I've got that x plus y equals 6, but instead of a y, I'm entering a 4 in there because we just found that y equaled 4. Okay, So this is x plus 4 equals 6. I would need to subtract 4 on each side. And when I do that, I get that x equals 2. So I found that y equals 4 and x equals 2. Neither one of those two are my final answers. My final answer is the point where they intersect. And that point where they intersect is 2, 4. So 2, 4 would be my answer for the substitution there. Okay? Next slide here, we've got a 4x minus 6y equals negative 22, and a 2x plus y equals 9. Okay? I want you guys first, pause your video, go ahead and try and do this one. If you want to unpause it, maybe check which variable I solved for. I think there's a pretty obvious variable that we should solve for in this situation. Okay, so the variable that you want to solve for, not a 4x, not a negative 6y, not a 2x. We are looking for the variables that are by themselves. You want to find the variables that are by themselves. If you don't, you're going to end up with fractions. You won't necessarily get the wrong answers, but fractions kind of suck to have to deal with. Okay? So the y is the one that I would solve for. Okay? If you are curious on that, you pause the video again and now try and solve it on your own, but I'm going to go ahead and solve it from here. Okay? So I've got a 2x plus y equals 9, and I'm going to solve for that y. So that means that I need to subtract 2x on both sides. And when I do that, I get that y equals negative 2x plus 9. Okay? And now I'm about to plug that into my other equation. So this time I found what y equals. So my top equation up here, okay, I'll do this top equation in red. We'll say that this is 4x minus 6y equals negative 22. So I just wrote 12, sorry. Equals negative 22. Okay? And remember, y equals negative 2x plus 9, right? Y equals negative 2x plus 9. So I've got 4x minus 6. Sorry, I'm struggling to write here, guys. 4x minus 6y. And what am I going to plug in for y here? Well, I'm going to plug in that negative 2x plus 9. That's my substitution step. Okay? And then that equals negative 22. Okay? So, we're trying to get this solved. So the first thing I've got here is I've got a negative 6. Don't forget that negative. And I've got to distribute that negative 6 in. So that gives me a 4x plus 12x minus 54 equals negative 22. Okay, I'm trying to get x by itself. So 4x and 12x, I need to combine those together. Gives me 16x minus 54 equals negative 22. Okay, then I would need to add 54 to both sides of the equation. 16x equals negative 22 plus 54. Ooh. Gives me 32, should be, positive 32. Okay, again, trying to get x by itself, so divide both sides by 16. Gives me x equals 2. Okay, so that x equals 2 is important. That's not my final answer, though. Now I need to take that x equals 2 and plug it back into either one of those two equations. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to use the bottom one, again, because I think it looks easier. So I've got 2x plus y equals 9, okay? And then that x there, we're going to substitute in what we found x to be, and we found x to be a 2. Okay, so it was 2x plus y equals 9, so now it's 2 times 2 plus y equals 9. So finish this one out. 4 plus y equals 9. Subtract both sides by 4. And I get that y equals 5. So x equals 2 and y equals 5. Remember, that is not my final answer. My final answer is the point made up of 2 and 5. So I'm going to have 2, 5 for my solution. Okay, so that's our substitution. Next slide that or next few we'll go over will be elimination.